Calcars. So today I'm going to go through the mini quiz from 429. So we've got the position of particle P, and then I've got the position of particle R, and that's for the given time from 0 to 6. So if I want to find anything with acceleration or speeding up or slowing down, first thing I'm going to need to do is find the velocity function. So for 1 and for 2, it's asking about particle P. So I'm going to start out with particle P to find the velocity function. For particle P, it's the derivative. So it equals, derivative of cosine is negative sine, so -2 sine. I keep the inside the same. Then I multiply by the derivative of the inside, which is pi over 4. So that equals negative pi over 2 sine of pi over 4t. Okay, so that is my position function. For my acceleration of p, I'm going to find the derivative of the velocity. So derivative of sine is cosine, so we've got negative pi over 2 cosine. I keep the inside the same. And then I multiply by the derivative of the inside. So I get negative pi squared over 8 cosine of pi over 4t. All right. So we're going to then plug in 3. So we've got acceleration of the particle P at 3 is going to equal negative pi squared over 8 times cosine of, plugging in 3 pi over 4. All right, cosine of 3 pi over 4, I'm going to just rewind and think back to my unit circle. 3 pi over 4 is in that quadrant, and the x value is negative there, so it's going to be negative pi squared over 8 times negative radical 2 over 2. All right, so that's going to be positive pi squared times radical 2 all over 16. All right, not the prettiest looking one, but that is your final answer. All right, is the particle speeding up, slowing down, or neither at time t equals 3? So when we say speeding up, slowing down, we are looking for my velocity and my acceleration. So the acceleration at 3 is positive because we just found that up here. My velocity at 3, well, I have to figure out what my velocity would be at 3. So I'm going to use the velocity equation. So v of 3 is going to equal, and I found that right there. So it's going to be negative pi over 2 sine of, plugging in 3 pi over 4. All right, now this is my y value at 3 pi over 4. So remember I did that up here. My y value is positive, so it's going to be negative pi over 2 times positive radical 2 over 2. So that's going to be a negative number. So if they have opposite signs, the velocity and acceleration, it will be slowing down because v of 3 and a of 3 have opposite signs. All right, so that is my justifying my answer. All right, for number 3, we've got particle r now. So we are talking about moving to the right. Moving to the right is when my velocity is positive. So we're looking at the velocity of particle r is positive. So I'm going to take the velocity by finding the derivative of my position. So 3t squared minus 12t plus 9. All right, so I'm going to find the velocity factoring out a 3. And then I can factor that further. 3t minus 3, t minus 1. So my velocity is going to be 0 at 1 and at 3. And it will be, if I pick 0, that would make it positive. If I pick one in between 2, that would make it negative. If I pick one bigger than 3, 4, that would make it positive. So the particle is moving to the right. Now remember, we've got endpoints here at 0 and 6. So it's going to be moving to the right. Again, it reminded me of my directions from 0 to 1, union from 3 to 6. And then if I had to justify my answer, because v of t is positive. That's my justification. All right, find all times and when they travel in opposite directions. All right, well, I just did my velocity for r, so I'm going to use that same chart that I just did. 1, 3, it went positive, it went negative, positive. All right, and now I need to do the same exact chart for my particle P. All right, so I'm going to take this equation, and I want to know when does that equal 0. So I want to know when does negative pi over 2 sine of pi over 4 t equals 0. Okay, so multiplying by negative 2 over pi, that's when sine of pi over 4 t equals 0. When does my y value equal 0? It equals 0, at pi, and at 2 pi. And we set what's inside equal to those values. So pi over 4t, pi over 4t, and pi over 4t. And we solve. So we've got t equals 0. Multiply by 4 over pi, we get t equals 4. And we get multiply by pi over 4, t equals 8. But I don't really worry about that because that's outside of my window range. So now I'm going to do my velocity of particle P. 0, there's 6. And then at 4 is when it's also equal to 0. So my velocity is going to be either positive or negative between 0 and 4. Let's pick 1. So if I plug 1 in, the y value at pi over 4 is positive times a negative. That's going to be a negative. Between 4 and 6, let's pick 5. 5 pi over 4. 5 pi over 4 is in that quadrant. So that's going to be a negative y value. Negative times a negative is going to be a positive. All right, so we want, when do they travel in opposite directions? That means when are the signs opposite? All right, so my signs are opposite from 0 to 1, and they're also opposite signs from 3 to 4. Okay, and that's it.